Story time about how I crashed my ex's wedding and managed to break them up a month later. I'm definitely toxic and vindictive. So when my boyfriend broke up with me, I knew what I had to do. He and I dated for 9 months. And you could say that I was a little overbearing. If you guys saw what this man looked like, maybe you'd understand. He's the type of guy that all the girls want to get with. Not only is he super handsome, but he's also very successful. And he's a great guy. Comes from a great family and he's really close to them. I, on the other hand, grew up in the foster system, so having a family was always my biggest dream. And when I met his family, they took me in right away. His mom and I essentially became best friends. His dad would take me out to dinners and lunch, and they basically adopted me as their daughter. Here's when things started going wrong. I was extremely jealous and I basically didn't let him do anything. Every time he wanted to go out with his friends, I would start a fight. Anytime he would bring up a female friend from the past, I would simply threaten to break up with him. Trust me, I recognized that what I was doing was wrong, but part of me just couldn't control myself. I was willing to do anything to make him stay with me. Eventually, he got really sick of me, started mentioning that he wanted to take a break. So that's when I told him that I was pregnant. Was I pregnant? Absolutely not. Part 2 is up. Story time about how I crashed my ex's wedding and managed to break them up a month later. The first time he threatened to break up with me, I told him that I was pregnant. It was obviously a lie and he knew it, so he basically still walked out on me. So in order to get his attention again, I decided to go to his family and tell them that I was pregnant. And they all believed me. His mom and dad even invited me to go live with them during the pregnancy. At first I said yes, but then I was like, hold on a second. How am I gonna fake a pregnancy? So to get myself out of that, I told him that I thought I was pregnant, but I actually wasn't. Yep, I'm starting my makeup all over again at this point. I had way too many layers on. During the time we were on a break, I basically followed him around everywhere just to make sure that he wasn't hooking up with any girls. Finally, 2 weeks later, he called me and told me that he missed me. We got back together, but the same thing happened. I was still jealous and controlling, but this time he was becoming more and more jealous. So much so that he started trying to control the way that I was dressing. Around this time, we started having huge fights. He would punch the wall right by my head. I would throw things at him, even threw a knife at him once. But part of me liked that he was so jealous and toxic. He was obsessed with me. And he broke up with me again, and 2 months later, he was engaged. And guess what? His family invited me to their engagement party. Part 3 is up. Story time about how I crashed my ex's wedding and managed to break them up a month later. That's when I get the invitation for his engagement party. At this point, it seems that my ex's parents thought we separated on good terms. So of course, I showed up to that engagement party. As soon as my ex saw me, he came straight to me and told me to leave. And I told him that I was welcome because his parents had invited me. He gave me a whole speech about how we were over and I needed to accept it. But of course, not one single part of me was willing to accept that. Then he called me an Uber, so I actually did end up leaving. When the wedding comes around, I was the first guest to show up. As soon as his parents saw me, they welcomed me. So I went and sat down at the parents' table. When my ex came out, he nearly fell over. Mind you, this is the first time I'm meeting his wife. I went up to her and told her that I was an ex of his. That's when she looked at me and said, when did you guys date? I said we dated for 9 months. And then she says that they had been dating at the same time. So then a whole bunch of drama goes down. She goes to him and starts slapping him. He starts to cry. And then his parents asked me to leave. So I did. The next month, I followed her everywhere. Finally told me to leave her alone and that they had already gotten a divorce. So my plan worked. Now I'm trying to figure out how to get back with my ex. What should I do?
I, 42 male, said something absolutely unforgivable to my daughter, 15-year-old female. I am a single father raising one daughter. My wife died in childbirth. I held it against my daughter, but eventually realized it was irrational of me to act that way. I thought I left it all behind me. I've been distant and dismissive lately, I'll admit. I've been going through a lot and I've been weak. I know that's not what she needs. I'm a bad father. My daughter came home late one night and I had been drinking a lot and was expecting to be passed out before she got back. She came home visibly upset. I asked her what was wrong, but she wouldn't tell me. She told me that I wouldn't understand and at times like this, she needs a mom. She turned around and started going upstairs and I said under my breath, well, you killed yours. And I know she heard me, but she didn't turn around and say anything. She just ran up the stairs and slammed her door. I shouted after her that I didn't mean it, but obviously she didn't respond. Never in all of her life have I said anything close to that. All I did was love and protect her, but this moment of weakness just came out. I don't know what to do or say at this point. It's been a day since she's talked to me, and I've never had to deal with anything like this before. I feel like I've permanently messed up my relationship. What can I do?
Story time! Okay, so my parents are separated, so I live with my mom. Now, my mom and my dad did not end off in good terms. Like, my dad absolutely hates my mom. And he's always trying to find ways to, ruin my mom's life. Like, for example, my dad always insults her, or he stalks her. And this one month, my dad got mad at my mom because my mom was dating this new guy. And when he found out, he ended up calling my mom to insult her like he always would, and he ended up threatening her. And because he threatened her, she was really scared to leave me alone that day. And while we were at the house that day, my mom decided she wanted to go over to my abuelita's house. And both my abuela and my aunt live together, but they're literally just like 5 seconds away. They're neighbors. So I told my mom, like, Ma, you know what? It's okay. Like, just go. I'll be fine. I also told her, like, Ma, the window is right there. You guys are like 5 seconds away. I can call you if anything happens. Don't worry. So she was just like, okay, I'll be right back, mija. So after that, I went and I lay down in my bed and I was watching something, but then I really had to use the bathroom. Now, the bathroom and the kitchen are right next to each other, right? And the kitchen has a window, and right next to the window is where our dinner table is at. Just try to imagine that, okay? So I get up and I go to the bathroom, and I know this is a little too much information, but I was doing number 2 and it was taking me a while. Like, I had to go. So while I was doing the restroom, I heard the most terrifying sound you could ever hear when you're alone in the house. And that was the curtains opening, the window squeaking open, and the chairs moving. I was so scared that I froze. But then after that, I quickly got up and I locked the bathroom door, trying to think of something to grab as a weapon, And at that moment, I absolutely hated myself for leaving my phone in my room. Obviously, I needed to finish doing the restroom, so I did my thing as quick as I possibly could. And then I grabbed a toothbrush because I didn't know what else to grab. So that's when I opened the bathroom door. I walked to the kitchen, and that's when I seen that the window was open, the curtains were thrown on the floor. And that's when I also remembered that I left some nails and a hammer in a basket close to the bathroom. So I grabbed that. So then I went to my room and I checked, and there was nothing. Checked in the living room, nothing. And in the kitchen, same thing, there was nothing. I didn't see anything, but I knew the only room that I didn't check was my mom's room. And I couldn't bring myself to check on my own. So I called my mom and she didn't answer. So then I called my aunt and she did answer. And I was like, Tia, I think someone broke into the house. Tell my mom to answer. I don't know why she's not answering. And my tia thought I was joking until I started crying. That's when she took me seriously and she gave the phone to my mom. And I told my mom what happened and she was like, okay, I'm on my way. After that, my mom came into the house and I told her, Ma, I've looked all over the apartment. The only place I haven't checked is your room. Now, the only place you can really hide in my mom's room is the closet. So my mom walked into her room, and literally not even a few seconds after she walked in, my dad ended up jumping out of the closet and jumped on top of her. He started cursing her out and I was terrified, and my mom was trying to stop my dad from hitting her. That's when my mom was like, hey, call the police. And my dad was like, si haga eso, mijita. And right when I was about to call him, I ended up calling my tia instead. It took 10 times of me calling her for her to pick up the phone. So I told my mom that my dad ended up breaking into the house and him and my mom were fighting. That's when both my aunt and my uncle ran over to our house. They burst through the door and my tia managed to get my mom out of my dad's grip. Finally, my mom was free and she ran over to me and she just hugged me, and I was frozen in shock, in tears. After my dad calmed down a little, we heard a knock at the door, and it was the police. They came in and they checked if everything was okay, and my dad told everyone to not say anything. But my mom ended up giving in and she ended up telling the police everything. After that, they made my dad leave and they told me to grab my things and we were gonna go sleep at my mom's sister's place. So we slept there one night, but then we had to go back to our house. We checked every corner of the apartment. We made sure every window was locked and we put extra security on the windows. Fast forward a bit and it was finally a normal day, but this time me and my mom didn't leave the house except to go and buy food. But we were still on high alert because of everything that had happened. So then finally it was nighttime and I had school, so I went to bed a little bit early. And my mom couldn't sleep and every little noise kept scaring us. But eventually we managed to go to bed. Now, I have 2 cats, and throughout the night, one of my cats ended up breaking a cup. Of course, it woke me and my mom up, and I don't know why, but my mom went to go check the windows. And she went to go check the window that my dad broke into. I asked if everything was okay, and she was like, yeah, everything's fine. So we went back to our rooms. But as I was laying down, I ended up hearing someone call my name. And I thought maybe I was just hearing stuff, till I heard someone call my name again. And then they were like, hey, open the door. When I didn't answer, they started screaming, open the door. And they kept repeating that over and over and over again. So then I thought, oh, maybe it's my mom. So I was like, what's wrong? But then I realized that it wasn't her saying that, it was my dad. And he was outside my window again. I'm a brave girl, so I got ready to leave my room. That's when my mom caught me going to the door. And she was like, what are you doing? Are you crazy? And then she was like, don't do that. Like, go get your phone and your shoes and a sweater. We're gonna go upstairs. There was a little area that my mom knew in our apartment that me and my mom would be safe at. Now, my mom didn't want my dad to go to jail. So she ended up calling my grandma, my dad's mom, to tell her that my dad ended up breaking into our house again. And my grandma was like, okay, don't call the cops. Like, we're on our way. And while they were on the phone, my dad had broken the window again and he had somehow like gotten through the locks. We heard him calling my mom's name and he was cursing her out. Finally, after waiting an hour, my grandparents finally showed up. And my grandpa was pissed. Like, he ended up dragging my dad out of our house. After that, they apologized to us and then they left. But me and my mom were still traumatized. We were so scared to be in that house alone. And I was scared for my mom because I didn't want my dad to do something to her. I knew he wouldn't do anything to me. Like, he wouldn't even lift his hand at me. But I was always around my mom because you never really know.